So you don't think they knew what they were talking about? What they wanted to focus on was the fact that you raised the price by 500%.
They wanted to focus on yelling at me. They wanted to focus that House committee is not a committee. It's a principal's office. It's for them to look down their nose and to pander to their constituents and not actually solve any problems. If they wanted to say, Mr. Shkreli, what advice do you have for us? How do we stop drug price increases like this? That's all they had to ask.
All right, so let me ask you that. You said you know exactly how to get drug prices down. How do you do it?
It's a crazy thought, and it's going to make a lot of Republicans not so happy. But I think the government should start a drug company. I think that
Start what?
Should start a drug company.
Start a drug company.
Absolutely. And in other countries, they're called state-owned enterprises. Countries like China and countries like Russia have done it to a T. And if the United States had a generic drug company that kept prices low on things like EpiPen, they kept prices low on all these older medicines like Daraprim, and they said, you know what, we're going to make Daraprim, we're going to make it for a penny a pill, and there's nothing anyone can do to stop us, because what the generic companies do is they take advantage of the situation. They'll buy the rights to an EpiPen, and when 2 or 3 competitors drop out, they'll jack up the price because they know they're the only game in town. And I don't blame them. They have to do it for their shareholders. But at the same time, if the government provided a steady supply, the same way they govern things like utilities, in many ways we want to view some of these old generic drugs as utilities. So let's just make it happen.
Well, 2 things on this. First of all, when you say, look, I don't blame them for raising the price, they have to do it for shareholders. I don't know about that. I mean, when you're running a drug company and you are producing drugs that are so important to save people's lives, don't you have an additional rule to follow, and that is just a moral responsibility to make sure to provide those drugs at affordable prices?
Absolutely, but that's why we mandated insurance in the United States. That's why if you look at Mylan's earnings, they have an 8% margin. CBS has a 20% margin. So if Mylan, it seems like they're on their way, to the bank laughing and screaming, they're not. These aren't easy medicines to make. They're pretty difficult. And in fact, Mylan's price increase has allowed them to grow earnings and do things like that. But they're no monopoly position where they're, enjoying this unbelievable windfall. There's competitors coming. They've had a brief ability to raise prices. That could end. And we've had collusion in the generic drug industry. That's the big problem. Yeah. 2 generic companies will go lockstep in price up together. That's not the way a competitive market's supposed to work.
Yeah, that's a good point. Now, let me ask you this, because you said the government should start a drug company. I mean, isn't this the same, issue that we're all talking about, that government just wants to be in your life in every way, and they want to control everything? That's why Obamacare is criticized so much, partly because it's government bureaucrats deciding what is good for your family. Wouldn't that be the same if the government owned a drug company? Maybe,
but, and that's why the Republican in me says it's a bit of a crazy idea. But if you've looked at some of the SEOs in China and some of these other countries, they've done a marvelous job. And some of the most valuable assets are government-run companies. So if they can do it, I think we can do it. And look who's joining our government. A lot of great business people.
Yeah,
so, to make drugs affordable for Americans and to avoid that incentive, let's just have a company that says, we're not going to try to make money. We're going to supply it at cost for all of America, all these amazing drugs that were invented many years ago that guys like me scrounge around for, try to buy the patents, try to take advantage of it. There's a lot of Martin Shkrelis out there that you haven't met. And everyone loves to make money. And, if the government just said, we're going to supply this medicine the same way we help supply other goods, I think it would help things.
Now, are you going to be calling Donald Trump in Congress in the coming days and weeks to try to get a meeting to try to present your ideas?
I'm available. They have my number. I think that we'll be in touch.
Let me ask you this, because President-elect Donald Trump obviously has received criticism for his tweeting.
Yes.
He's not the only one. Your Twitter account was suspended over harassment claims, so you're blocked off of Twitter.
Yes.
How are you dealing with that?
Withdrawal. It's methadone. I went to Facebook. So Facebook is actually, I don't know if you heard of this company. They have 6 times the users. They're a $300 billion company. Their CEO might become the next president of the United States, I've heard. And it's a wonderful product. And I've realized that Twitter is actually pretty obsolete. And I was banned for, I think, being a Republican. The journalist who got me banned, I made a teenage photo locker room montage of her, like a 12-year-old would hang in his locker, of her beautiful face. And this was harassment, apparently. And again, that's the kind of world that I think the left wants us to live in. And a healthy dose of Donald Trump sort of counters that quite a bit. And that's why I'm here. I've never been to inauguration. I don't do politics, but this is exciting.
Wow, it is. Martin, good to see you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us. Martin Shkreli joining us there this morning.